just restart.
Yeah, sorry. This is Tracy Drummond, archivist for the Labor Archives at Georgia State University Library, and we're here today with Antoinette Brooks-Floyd, who's going to tell us a little bit about her history with the labor unions and activism. And today's date is November 20th, 2013. We're in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Tony, for agreeing to be here with us today. So the first question, and I just asked it, but there was an issue with the recorder.
Yeah.
Where were you born, and you started telling me a little bit about
I was born in New York City
parent.
at a hospital, Lenox Hill Hospital, and I was the first child of my parents who had 2 more children later. And at the time, they lived with my grandmother, who had, I believe it was leukemia, and so they were there as kind of caretakers, and it was in Ardsley, New York. So as I grew up in New York City.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My father was a Wall Street investment banker. My mother did not work, but when the war came, which was I was born in 1939, so when the war came in 1940s, we were living in New York at the time, and my mom went to work, and she went to work for the New Yorker magazine, and she wrote the talk of the town part. But then after the war and after we got older, she quit her job and we moved. She became ill for much of my childhood, so she hurt her neck when 7 years after I was born, when she had my brother, and since that time she always had health issues. So we lived across the street from another family, and when we moved to the suburbs, which people did after the war, I guess, it's very typical from what I've read, we moved to Hastings-on-Hudson, which is a interesting town, but that's another whole story. And we moved onto an estate that had 3 houses, and my parents bought one, and the other family bought one. And while there were 3 in my family, there were 4 in that family, and their name was Barnes, my name was Brooks, and when we went to school, we were like stepladder. Each of us was in a different class, but they always got us confused. So we were like one big family, and it was nice. It was like having kind of two parents. You always had this adult in your life. So it was a pretty good childhood.
So even after y'all moved to the suburbs, did your dad, did he continue to be an investment banker?
He did, but they put him to another side of that. And my dad was alcoholic, and my uncle was alcoholic, and my aunt was alcoholic, and my other uncle was alcoholic. But the disease came on them all at different times. And some of them were, my dad is probably what you would call a functioning alcoholic for many years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was not as successful as he could have been, the big P for potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and then my parents did get divorced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and was that when you were still pretty young, or was that?
I was about 17.
Okay.
Yeah. But I am remembered. I still get together with my kids from my class. We meet at different. I went to a high school that it was public school, about only 100 in the graduating class, and really good, nice education. And we still get together. Now, we got together every 5 years. We didn't even get together for the first 15. Mm-hmm. But then every 5 years we get together. Now we get together every 2.5 years because we're dropping off.
Right.
So, but we meet in different cities. And we still, all the spouses and people in that class, we get together. But the big thing that they remembered really about me was that my parents got divorced. Because that was before all the parents, the 80s was when everybody's parents started getting divorced. Yeah. So.
'So at 17, What did you know about labor unions?
I knew
Because
nothing.
I would imagine
Yeah.
with your dad being an investment banker.
Yeah, my dad was Republican,
Uh-huh.
and I was sick when I was about going into the fourth grade, and we had a small country house in Culver, Connecticut, and they would come and visit me. My dad would come one weekend, and my mom would come another weekend, and my dad cut out dolls, and it was kind of like a toy, where you have a person and then you make their clothes and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and you cut it out and put it. Well, he bought me one of Tom Dewey.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really miss him because he died in 1984, but I really miss him because I'm of course Democrat. He was Republican, but we, so we would call each other and, yeah, you hear that, and we'd sort of, be able to go back and forth. And so we had a good, he was accepting of, my dad was an interesting person. I'll give you a story about my dad and generation. Later on in life, my dad retired, and he lived down in Orange County, and he basically watched TV on his color TV and drank.
Orange County,
California.
Yeah. Okay.
And at that time, I was in my second marriage, and my second marriage was to an African American man. And we would go down there and visit. And then one time, we're down there. My dad gets out the pictures, when he was in school, and he went to, like a prep school. And he's looking at the picture, and he goes, "Oh," he says, "you see, there was no African Americans, no blacks." And, then he's looking at the picture, and he's like, this thing comes over him, and he goes, "There were no women there." So it was like that moment when he realized that, like, I was a person.
Right. Right.
That rather than, the girl. And so that was, that's kind of how my dad was. He was sort of a victim of his times and his disease.
Okay. So what happened after you graduated high school? Did you get a job? Did you go to college? What was next for you?
Okay, I graduated high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I got pregnant, and I got married.
Okay.
And
To Thomas Hartley
Stucklin. Yes. And I had a child by the time I was 19, my first child. I went to NYU, and I basically talked my way into the best classes I could. I didn't take the thing. Previous to that, I had gone on weekends. In Massachusetts and that area, there's so many good colleges.
Mm-hmm.
So I would talk myself into or get invited to weekend and hear, lecturers and people that I wanted to hear. And so that's kind of I guess I started early. I thought it was, but I really have taken responsibility for educating myself.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I don't like about it is, I didn't have a lot of discipline about it, right? But what I like about it is I didn't get anybody else's. I got such a wide range of ideas and stuff, and I put in there that I went to like junior colleges, like in California,
Mm-hmm.
and I would do that after I worked and went to school, had kids, but I would take mostly science and stuff because I needed to learn the vocabulary so I could read about it.
Okay.
So that's...
So like the hard, like biology, chemistry, astrology.
well, geology.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and also, some political science and stuff like that.
So you're not an arts and sciences gal.
No, well, I'm dyslexic, as I put down.
Or I
there.
guess an arts gal, yeah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I like to, I love art, and I do art myself, but it's what I like.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
great.
I'm not,
So what was your first job? Did you work in high school, or
I worked in the high school cafeteria, sold this sandwiches. I worked for my first father-in-law. He had a contracting business, and I, would answer the phone and stuff like that. And I also worked very shortly for some. He had a building, and he sublet it to various people, and I worked for a time as assembling stuff. And when I babysat for a musician and his wife, and the child that I babysat for, well, there were two of them, but the older one, instead of reading to them, he would say, "Play Fats," and that was Fats Waller. Mm-hmm. And he had the old 78s, and we put them on, and I really fell in love with jazz right then and there, because that man had such a sense of humor. He was really talking about the people of that time. And so then this musician used to do like college dates and stuff like that, and then he would bring back the musicians, and he'd say, "Do you want to stay?" And his wife stay. And so of course I got to hear really good live music, and that was really, really fun. Yeah. So I had I really had a lot of good things going in my childhood.
It sounds really diverse.
Yeah.
And so you got married in 1958.
Yeah.
And what was did you stay where you were, or did y'all move from there?
We stayed. We lived in a small apartment at his brother's for a while in the basement, and then we moved to our own house. The address was 12 Railroad Avenue, Yonkers, New York. And it was one of those shotgun places, and it was the top floor of somebody else's, it was like an apartment that they had made. And it was, I guess it was good. I had, he worked for his father, which was a little bit crazy. He had an accident in high school, and so he had one more year to finish. So he was finishing school, high school, and so it, I kind of just did whatever came my way. But having children, there's not that much that comes your way at that time. So I didn't really work. I was going to school, as best I could.
Right. So when did you enter the workplace full on?
In 1964.
In 1964? So that would have been enough time for your baby to get to kindergarten and elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I worked nights.
Okay.
When I went for the interview, they said, "Are you willing to work at 24 hours?" Because of the airline. I said, "No, just nights."
Okay. Yeah. And that was TWA?
Yeah.
Okay. And where were those offices located?
They were located, that time, they were located downtown Los Angeles in a building that's no longer there.
So when did you get to Los Angeles? Because...
Oh, when did I move to Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Okay, my husband was working for his parents.
Okay.
And it was not a good situation, because they would go. And of course, he was an alcoholic too, but I didn't know that. I just thought he was a gambler. I mean, But, so we decided we were going to move. We really needed to get away from parents and stuff. And so we had two places in mind. One was Maine, and the other one was Los Angeles. And Maine because, there's a farm there. We liked the people, and he liked it. And I picked Los Angeles. I liked Los Angeles because, and this is so ironic, because it was cheap to live. You could raise kids. I knew I would go crazy with kids in an apartment in the winter. And, housing, everything was great. It was a great place to move. And so we just, that's what we did.
Those post-war years.
This was 1961.
Okay. Oh, so even later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So y'all headed to Los Angeles.
Just got in the car and did it.
Are they using that office too? We're getting ready to put all of our storage back, and they were told to put it in here.
So we were talking about how you guys got to Los Angeles. Okay.
And we picked LA because we thought it would be a good place to move with children, and it was economical, and we could afford it, and we could both get education. And so we moved, and we just, I flew with the kids, and my husband drove out in a car that was so old that they couldn't stop it. I mean, they couldn't, like if you turn the ignition off, then it would be all over. So they just kept going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So then that means they didn't, when they filled up with gas, they didn't turn off.
No. Well, those days it was a little different. I know.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
I know, it's amazing the things we did and didn't realize in those days. It was quite, So anyway, we got in an apartment that was, it's kind of like a motel type of apartment in that it had an inner courtyard and 2 stories. And we settled in an area called Culver City, which was about 8 miles from the beach. And there were a lot of people, young people, who had kids and had husbands that worked, and they stayed home. And so we would put all the kids in the courtyard, and they had something called a Helms Bakery. It was a truck that would come by with donuts and everything every morning, and we'd buy our donuts, make the coffee, and sit in somebody's apartment and watch our kids.
Nice.
Yeah, it got boring though.
Yeah.
It got real boring. And every once in a while somebody had a second car, and I used to be pretty good with cars, so I could fix the muffler or take some chewing gum and do it to get it going, and we'd take the kids to the beach. And the beach then was not as developed, and just where, kind of like Venice Beach there, were able to, if you've been to Los Angeles, you know the beach is very, very long. It's unlike the Atlantic Ocean. And so we were able to play volleyball, watch the kids, and do all that at the same time. And we just used to hang out. Yeah, it was very nice. But it did get boring.
Okay.
My husband, by this time, he was working he had started working for Bank America at night, and then we had a friend who was in the movie business, so he got a job with Cinerama, which went out of business, of course. But he had a job there, and he sometimes had to work nights. So I just was bored out of my gourd. I needed adult something. And I had a friend that worked at TWA, and they had hired people, and but then they didn't have enough people. And this was in the 60s. This is when they really wanted workers. It was amazing. And so she told me about the job. I went down to get the job, and I had an interview. I had to take a test, and because I'm dyslexic, I knew that I could never be a secretary or anything like that. And I felt like for women, remind me to tell you a story about what happened to me when I went to NYU about women. So I did take a math test, which a lot of women couldn't pass. So I passed that with flying colors, and I went for the interview, and the guy, when he started talking about, when you come to work for us, the parking is a little limited, and he started talking about the parking space that I have. I knew I had the job, so which would kind of surprise me that it was that easy. I just fell into it. And it's kind of the story of my life. I've fallen into everything that I've gotten. So then I started working, and I worked 6 to 10 at night, and my husband theoretically would come home and watch the kids. And then I had a friend, and by this time we lived in another apartment, and I had a friend in another apartment. I just got to know her, and we used to just trade babysitting. I never had formal child care. Okay. And then there was also an older woman who lived in my building, and she would come and watch the kids. Her name was Shotzi, and she was blind, kind of going blind, and it was great because the kids, she would trip over stuff, and the kids would, and she'd break things when she washed dishes. So the kids got really good because they didn't want her to trip or break the dishes or whatever. So they kind of bonded well, and they were, they really were better for her than they were for me.
Oh, nice.
But I was going to tell you about, So when I was at NYU, and as I said, I would take all this class, and I spent a lot of time like in the lunchroom and with sort of anarchy type friends and stuff. And there's two stories I have. One was that a group of them decided that they wanted me to run for president of some student council or something. I can't remember what it was, and I was not. So I said okay, and I put my name in, and well, I didn't know that there was this whole thing, like if you want to go to medical school or you want to go to graduate school, or I was like totally naive that you had to get one of these jobs like president or something or whatever. So when the ballot came out, my name is Brooks, Brooks. Well, they had me down as Crooks. And I looked on a typewriter, and C is not anywhere near B. No, was not a typo. So that was my lesson, one lesson about the male world, because at that time it was males that were, it was a fraternity that did, everybody from them. Okay. Second thing I learned about the male world, because I was, my high school was good. We were all kind of, and I was brought up that you could do anything you wanted. So I was in the cafeteria, and this person came along and said, would you like to be in a story about about college life? And I said, sure. And they said, would you be available for pictures, to take pictures and stuff like that? And I said, sure. And it was for the Herald Tribune, which was competitor with the New York Times, but they went out of business. Everything I ever did went out of business. So the article comes out, and I signed the release and everything. And the article comes out, and they said, we'll send you a thing. And it was, the name of the article was, Are Women Taking Up Space? It was Sputnik time. Are women taking up space in our colleges because they're just going to get married and have kids? And there was my picture, they had one at the blackboard and stuff with a big X through it. And so I realized then that,
That's appalling.
Well, and this was not some backward paper.
No.
So that was, I was lucky but in a way that I really got it right away, before I even got to California. And then you get to California, it's very open, very, a little different. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And you were just about to start telling me about your first job as a reservationist. Part-time evenings, you worked in that same job from 1964 to 1990.
Yes.
What
technological advances did I see?
Yeah, I think we should definitely cover that. But just in terms of maybe how women were treated on the job, I think that there might be differences in there. And also, and that was that the machinist union organized that the whole time, or
no, there was no union.
There was no union
at all.
Okay.
None.
Okay.
That's why. I went to work. There was absolutely no union. No senior. There was a Senior Railway Labor Act, which is different than Taft-Hartley. So they did have somewhat of a system of seniority, but part-timers had no seniority.
Right.
None. There was not this. It was the same. So what happened is that I worked part-time. And at that time, you wrote everything on a 3x5 card, and everything was in code. And you put it down a belt. And there was a dress code. I've been told at work that my skirts are too short, my skirts are too long, you can't wear boots. And I'm a pretty conservative dresser, so everybody got that, And there was a lot of what you might say sexual harassment in the office. A lot of coming by and rubbing your shoulder and all that. Yes, crappy stuff. So, but that was the times too. Right. I think
Well, did anything ever happen that really crossed a line so severely that?
No, not to me.
Not to you.
No,
Okay.
No, and I not that I know. There wasn't a culture of sexual harassment.
Okay.
It's more like it was more like in the military line. It was like railroad, airlines. A lot of these people came from the military, And so it was very, there's management and workers, and then there were women workers, and we were just like the lower of the low. But the pay was very good for part-time.
Okay.
It was the same pay as the full-time, only you work less hours. So after a couple of years, I was working, and I was called into the office for some infraction or whatever. I have no idea. I can't remember. But I didn't last very long before I started crying, like a minute. So after whatever happened, I came out, I sat down, and I remember this so clearly. I said to myself, you can quit this job, just quit it. And I said, no, you can't do that. You've got 2 kids, your marriage is really rocky, so then I said, well, you can learn to keep your mouth shut. And then I knew enough about myself then. No, I couldn't do that. So the third thing was, you can learn to go there and stay 2 minutes. And that's what I did. And I learned how to last 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And then I started, had the ability to arbitrate under the Railway Labor Act. And there were a couple people in my office that did that. And they kind of mentored me and took me under their wing. And
they were women or men?
One man and one woman.
Okay.
And they showed me how to represent other people. So then people started coming to me and them, and when they would go in, they had a series of grievances. You get your verbal warning, and so just like if you had a union, only you don't have a union. So what happened is that over time they retired, and I was like, I was doing all these grievances for people, and of course it gets crazy. There's all this intrigue. It is like one big office, women. So somebody get in trouble, and then they tell somebody else, and there's all this gossip, and you're representing people, and you're going in, and then so now the management doesn't like you very much. They're really, like, what's wrong with her? But then they have to work with you because they respect you. So I realized that we needed a union, and so did other people in my group. So,
and was any other part of TWA organized at the time?
The machinists were on the property as mechanic, and I believe they had the ramp at that time too. Okay.
Was ALPA in there with the airline pilots at the time?
ALPA was...
They might have been formed later.
Right. I'm not sure about the airline pilots, but however, I will say the United Airline pilots, when we first began to figure out, so I actually joined the ACLU Workers' Rights Committee, and I started finding out a lot about unions, what they were. Okay. Paul Schrade from the auto workers, I think he had been a vice president of auto workers. He was one of the guys that was shot with Kennedy in Los Angeles.
With Reagan?
No.
With Kennedy?
Robert,
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So he and then there was some guys called Zellerbach 7, and so I started to really learn about what contracts were, just by osmosis, and I also learned some organizing type things, because we used to do, we started this thing called the Golden Lunchbox Award, and we took regular lunchbox and spray painted it, and then we give it to somebody, and so I learned a lot of those techniques for stuff. So, and that I started learning about what we needed in that workplace, and how to maybe get it there. All right. So one of the things that we figured out is that we needed a split in class and craft, because we worked 24 hours. We were in a reservations office, and they were classifying us with clerical in Kansas City, all had cushy, 9-to-5 jobs, didn't have to worry about seniority, whatever. And there was no chance that we could win if we didn't get that class and craft split. And the United Pilots actually helped us do that. Now, why they did that, I really don't remember. I don't know why. So we did get that, and then this is embarrassing, but we read the Railway Labor Act backwards and forwards, right? And by this time we had sort of formed a little implant type of thing. And coincidentally, we got laid off. There was this layoff, late 70s, and they laid off all the part-time. So we went down to unemployment and they said, no, we didn't lay you off. We just reduced your hours to 0. But we won the unemployment, obviously. But we realized that the company was not on our side.
Right.
Yeah. So that even radicalized more people. So we did have this implant thing, and what we decided to do is to work to get seniority. And we did use the grievance procedure to do that, and we never used the word part-time. We did regular employee, reduced hours, and we took it step by step by step. And of course they were always trying to, we didn't have anything to back us up except that Railway Labor Act, but they didn't want to be bad citizens, so they would just, they'd sort of talk to you like they were going to do something, but they wouldn't. So we always got a bad answer, which we could then take it to the next step. So finally we get to the top guy. And the only reason we got to the top guy, even though we had the right to appeal, is we went through a secretary, and secretary, we just convinced her. And so she convinced him to hear it. And she also told us what to say and how to present it to him. And we did. And there were 3 people that were elected to go and talk to this guy, and I was one of them. So we go and we talk to him. Dave Crombie was his name. And
can you spell that?
Crombie, I think.
Okay.
And he came down with a decision that we would get seniority, but it was like you had to work 5 years, 5,000 hours. It was a very tricky seniority thing. But we got it. And so we came back to the office. There were supervisors that actually quit over that. We were communists. We were, I can't tell you, they just, because they had that male military attitude. And so, we were just, whatever. So then it became even more obvious. So we really, we couldn't be getting everybody's secretary on our side. So we had to have something a little more permanent. So we said, okay, we'll take the Railway Labor Act. And we took it, we look at it, who's responsible for actually, I guess, enforcing it? Is the Attorney General of the United States. So there had been no litigation on this. Everybody wanted to leave it alone, especially because of when Eastern came, then there was some litigation, and nobody wanted to mess with it because they could lose stuff or gain stuff. So we go down, about 3 of us, we go down to the office of the Attorney General in Los Angeles. And I'm trying to remember the guy's name because he was really, And we say, you're responsible for this, and this is what's going on in the office. He must have dined out on this story for a long time. And, but you know what? He was really gracious. He said, I know, but there's been, there's nothing we can really do because there's no but. He said, I'll give you some books. And he did. He gave us some really good books to read about unions and the law and the Railway Labor Act and what had been written on it, and he was extremely helpful. So then we looked around for a union, and the union that really was interested was the Teamsters. Now, the IEM was not interested because we were women.
Mm-hmm.
We were not machinists, and the machinists, they were having their own problems with, it's a craft union.
Mm-hmm.
That's the IEM. So what happened there is the Teamsters came, organized. We organized. I was organized in plant, and they're good organizers, but we lost. It was close, but we lost. Then a little bit later, the communication workers came along, and they were very good,
Mm-hmm.
and it would have been a good fit. And they had a different way of organizing, and it was quite. They have a lot of fairly educated people, and about 3/4 through that drive, AT&T went on strike, and Morton Barr had to pull out everybody because that was the strike, so you had to pull out of that drive.
And what year would that have been?
I'm not good on years,
Okay.
but
Would that have been before 70 or?
no, it was probably after 70.
Okay.
Yeah, but probably maybe mid 70s.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that one went down the tubes. Then the next one was the machinists came in, but they only came in because I think maybe the Teamsters came in again. I can't even remember, but IFA and the Teamsters and the IEM. So I think by that time, that they were saying to the IEM, somebody was saying, we're never going to get them, and that there started to be that feeling that they wanted to bring in more people. So so we had an election, and actually the IEM won, which was really good. And so my dream was I was going to be the committee person for that office.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I got that job. Well, we had waited by the time we won the election till we got a contract. We weren't actually in the union, so the contract, I would go to the union meetings, but we weren't. So I think it's 2 years, or maybe it was even 3.
Before you got a contract?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Well, the airlines, even if you have a contract, it's 2 and 3 years. It's terrible.
Mm.
So then I had that job as a committee person for 2 weeks, and then I again fell into another job. I got called up by my district, and they offered me a job as a general chairperson, or what they call a business rep.
And what district is that?
District 142.
District 142.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went up there, and I was like...
And when you say up there?
Kansas City.
Okay.
Kansas City. They were in Kansas City. So I went to Kansas City, and Carla Winkler, who was the flight attendant, you probably know or have done something with her. She was the only other woman there, and she had brought in a group of flight attendants from Continental at District 142. So she came by to me, and she goes, "Thank God, another woman like that." But actually, in the part that I did, she kind of had flight attendants, and it was Continental, but I was dealing with like TWA people and stuff like that. So they tried, but they really didn't give me much of no training. I got to go to Placid Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it, and it was good. That was my education. So, because they were all so busy, everybody went different directions. But at my local lodge,
But the Wimpesinger Center wasn't built until the late 70s, early 80s.
well,
so
we didn't get the union until 90.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is a long
So
process.
okay. So this has covered.
Yeah,
A
I
lot
mean, we
of
had these
territory.
drives, but then there's years before,
Mhm.
between drives and stuff, yeah. So we, my local lodge, 1111, had, they represented, there were a couple of unions that were in that same building. 1932, 1111, I think there was a tiger, Flying Tigers thing for a while. Anyway, one of the reps from United, which was District 141, he kind of took me under his wing and let me shadow him, and he had a lot of the West Coast area. And so I shadowed him for a while and learned how to do the actual job. And then Placid Harbor taught me, I mean, I had been doing arbitration. I had done, and one time, they used to do things like, that's why I knew we needed a contract. They'd come in and they'd have two lawyers now because the way I won grievances was or arbitration, I knew the company would lie. So the only thing that I had to do was figure out how to get them to lie and ask the right questions to get them to lie and then catch them in it. And then I'd win. I didn't have to know a lot. I didn't know a lot of stuff. I didn't have that knowledge really. I had just street knowledge or something, you know. And that was basically my tactic. So when I went to Placid Harbor, I learned, you have the theory of the case, you know, you do this. They help, you know, teach me better ways to organize stuff. But I did. Sometimes I'd have two lawyers and they'd go, "Oh, you can do it," you know. No, you can't. You're not going to win when there's two lawyers against you. Yeah. So, you know, one to keep the company quiet and the other one to argue it. So, so I learned, you know, and that's why I'm here today. Actually, is that they really gave me my real education.
Okay.
Placid Harbor. Yeah.
And so, not only were you finally organized in 90,
Yeah.
but you also went full time then.
Yeah, I went full time. After we got the union, I went full time. My
Okay.
kids were grown, and there was an opportunity to go
Okay.
full time.
Okay.
And I knew I couldn't be a rep. The IM would not make me a rep if I was part time.
Okay. So when they called you up to the district, 142, what were you helping them with mainly there? Was that the
district? You know, the general chair.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what you do is each one of us did the same thing. We got the same salary,
Mm-hmm.
and we did pretty much the same thing, although some were more qualified than others. So they would assign you stations. Well, I got crappy stations because I was the new person on the block. Robert Roach and I came in at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. Robert, one experience Robert and I had, when District 100 Eastern went belly up, all the reps that represented Eastern were gone, lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But there were two reps, general chairs, that represented the foreign carriers that District 100 had. And they merged those carriers into District 142. So these guys, I guess they thought they'd keep their job, which would be a reasonable assumption. All right? Well, and it's New York, right? And Robert and I get this assignment. No other person from our district comes, we get this assignment. You two go down and tell them you're their new reps. Because they weren't going to take on, I forget the two guys' names. They weren't going to take them, right? And so Robert and I...
Can I ask a question? Were they white?
They were white males, and they had been doing pretty good job.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
So then a woman and an African American
American show up.
Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah. So we showed up. We handled it. We even had one guy invite us back to the Christmas party, but the guys were there. So it was it was drama. It was drama, but we handled it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's, and those are things you can't teach anybody how to handle that.
No.
You really can't.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It's just experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert had the experience of being a president of a local, so he knew how to handle local, and I was pretty good with people.
Mm-hmm.
So we managed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm sure you more than managed. I want to talk. So you were a reservationist, and you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier that in the beginning you would fill out a card,
Mhm.
like a punch card,
Right.
and then it would.
No, it was a
Oh.
3x5 regular 3x5 card, but it had
Okay.
pre-printed on it, like where they were going, the name, and everything like that. And then there was like a little rubber band belt with the little fences on either side, and it would go down to somebody who was quality control to make sure that everything on that card was filled in.
Mm-hmm.
Not that necessarily that it was right, but that
Yeah.
it was filled in. So what they would do then is they would file it in shoe boxes by name in the back. They had what they called a records department.
Based on flight, the
Based on the flight,
Okay.
each flight.
Okay.
All right, and just before I hired in, they used to do phone calls every 45 minutes, and you would have a board, and they would chalk off which flights were available or not available, so forth. But when I first came in, within a couple of months, and they gave me good training, sent me to New York. I had 3 weeks of training, learned all the nowadays I don't think anybody does that kind of training, and you really need it.
Mm-hmm.
So they had something called, I don't know if you've ever seen that kids game where you push a stylus and it lights up, it's yes or no kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's what it was. It was called a teleregister. I think it was called teleregister. And there were you had a card that you slipped into this teleregister, and it would show you whether the flight was sold out, whether it was available, or whether it was on yellow condition, which meant that you could sell it, but you had to call somebody to get a seat. You know, it's like, all right. So we had that system with the 3x5 cards. Now American Airlines is getting a computer. IBM is developing a computer for them. All right, so they get this computer. I guess this is 1983, 4, something like that.
Okay.
Maybe in there.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. So they get this computer, and everything is working real good. Okay. Now the main problem in airlines for selling seats is you're selling a seat, which once it leaves, you have no chance to sell that again.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But also you have to, because you have a large number of people who don't show up, you have to build into your system some way that you can oversell your seats. Otherwise, you're going to go broke.
Do you think that happens today, that people just don't show up, or do you think that?
Well, they have. We were regulated then.
Okay, that's right. Deregulation and
Really changed a lot of
Mhm,
stuff.
mhm, mhm.
So we would get, like in Vegas, you know, it was just you could tell people to go stand by because they're always going to get on, you know, because people just don't show up. So they had to build into it. So anyway, American got theirs. So we were supposed to get Burroughs, another company that went out of business. Story of my life, right? So we were going to get the Burroughs. They was going to be better than anything. They even named it Charlie, right? For whatever reason. We were going to get this computer, Charlie. Okay, what year goes by, another year goes by, I don't know. A couple more years go by, we're still not getting this computer. Then United, they got IBM to do theirs. Now, American had a proprietary system from IBM, so the leftovers basically went to United, and they built them a system that somehow didn't compete with the system for American. American, yeah. So now we're going to get a better system than anybody, right? No. Burroughs goes out of business. So what do? We get the third proprietary system from IBM, which is a piece of junk. There was all different programs for different things. If somebody wanted to do, so it took like hours to make a reservation. Plus, you had to teach people how to, none of us knew how to work computers. So it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine you had to learn some basic code and commands and stuff to put the reservations.
Yeah, well,
in?
you did the reservations. So now what happened is you're computerized, right? How did you do things before you were computerized? You had teletype operators.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all these people that got paid by the word. Now they're obsolete because you're in a computer, but they give them our job. That was nice. But the only thing is, you find you're sitting next to somebody, they're typing in 100 words a minute. And you're going,
ka-chunk, ka-chunk,
yeah.
ka-chunk.
So you realize, I got to learn this or else I'm going to be out of a job pretty soon. Because you're trying to talk, you realize that, So by that time, since I'm dyslexic, I had helped some people with grievances, and one person had this system that this guy who was Iranian, but he called himself Persian. Everybody at that time was calling himself Persian. But he managed to put parts together and come up with, like a computer. And I think it was like $1,200 or something, but that was really cheap for anything. And actually,
and that would have been early to mid 80s.
Yeah,
okay.
About 84 or 5, something like that. So I got myself a computer and a very primitive word thing, and it changed my life. I could, now I could write so much better. Mm-hmm. And then I learned how to touch type. And so I'm still not fast, but I can read and do that. That basically then that getting the computers, they just kept kind of improving a little bit, but that was basically the end of the technology in the airline industry. And then basically it all went downhill. When we got deregulated, we lost money, I think 16 years or something, and finally went out of business. I mean, that sort of sums it up a little bit. You'd have the pilots would want to take over the airline, so they'd make a pilot. And then the bean counters would want to take over for them. And then we had Icon, who was famous for breaking up companies. And he actually kept us alive more than he probably would, because he had this great thing that he did, which, and people would disagree on this, but he figured out how to get bonds and keep the company afloat he would take like a light bulb from one plane, and an engine from another, and a system from another plane, so there was no way that they could foreclose. And he had these bonds, and people bought them. It was kind of like the original mess there, and he just basically figured out that the pieces of an airline were better than, and also Ozark had merged and I think they had a pretty good pension, and he was able to tap into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so there were different ways that they tried to save the airline, but none of them really worked in the long run.
Right. And of course, other airlines have, because TWA was what year?
That it went
Yeah.
belly up. 2000.
Yeah, and 10 years before there had been Eastern,
Which
was plagued
well,
by
Eastern went out because of their own, because of the strike.
Yeah.
Lorenzo was really whatever. What did shock me was Pan Am going out because they had everything. They had the political power. They had really good employees, really, really knowledgeable. They trained their employees well, and they had loyal customers. They had customers, that from around the world, because they were going around the world.
And what year did they?
They went out. I know it was I think it was even before computers. I mean, it was such a shock because they merged with National Airlines in Florida, I guess to get some domestic routes, and the culture, it just destroyed them. They just never worked together. They never, I don't know whether it was managed or
I remember National
Yeah.
Airlines from when I was
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
Huh.
So,
Okay. So, you were a reservationist from 64 until 2000, which is when you retired.
I retired. Yeah, I retired. No, I still kept my job at the district for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you continued to work.
Yeah.
Okay. At 142.
But yeah, I didn't.
Because for a while there, then that means you would have been in the union, but also working for the district. Were you holding officers?
I took a leave.
Oh, you took a leave. Okay.
The TWA. So I was still working with TWA.
Okay.
I mean, I was on leave.
Okay.
That's the usual procedure.
Okay.
in
Okay.
airlines.
All right. I knew that. I really
I know
do.
you know
I
that.
mean, I do, but it's not something I work.
And no
work with
problem.
every day.
Yeah,
No, because I've talked to. I mean,
it's a whole different language. The
It is.
union thing,
It's-
and the Railway Labor Act is a whole different thing as well. So sometimes, people don't realize that, and I don't know Taft-Hartley that well. People ask me questions, and I really don't know.
Don't ask me any questions about any of that. So from 66 to 75, you talked a little bit about being with ACLU, the Workers' Rights Committee, and from 2001 to present, the Friends of the Washington Irving Library branch. So what do you do with the library?
Well, we have, I think, 72 branch libraries in LA. And what I do is I'm president of the Friends group for my library, and we have a bookstore, and we sell books, and then we provide programs and help, for the library. I came about it, I got involved locally to save our library. They wanted to build a new one. We had it was a real reading library, and they wanted have computers and all that. And I wasn't for that. So anyway, it was so bad that they had to bring in mediators for the neighborhood.
Wow.
Yeah, it got really bad. So anyway, they promised all these things if we went along with the new library. Well, they built a new library, and they didn't come up with their promises because the budget got cut, and the landscaping never really happened, and they didn't put a gate where they should have, and there was drug dealing, and people are
And
not
what
going to.
neighborhood? What
Yeah, I live
LA?
in Mid-City area of
Okay.
LA. So they, people just aren't going to come to a place that's like that. So after a while, I said, I looked again. I had one of these little talks with myself and said, you've got your resentment here, you got to get rid of it. What can I do to get rid of the resentment? Well, go and participate in the Friends Library and see how you can help. So I did, and I started going to meetings, but I just have to run things. I'm very controlling. Okay. So I'm better. I work at it. I work a 12-step program for that. And but at that time, I just couldn't deal with the fact, and so I started taking over the meetings. But there was a president, but he would never show up. And then finally one day, he just never showed up. So they said to me, "Why don't you just, when we want to do something?" They said, "Why don't you just act like the president?" So I said, "Okay, I'll do acting president." And then they wanted to, we had no money. We started making money. We started doing stuff. And they said, "Well, why don't you, when you sign that letter, because we were having a program or something, why don't you just sign as president?" That's okay. But the good part is everybody works hard because they're so thankful that I'm the president, right? And so we have a bookstore, and also the library. I worked the library. I tutored a developmentally disabled person for 2 years, but you had to be real consistent. And then I started working more for my union after I retired, so that I gave that up. But the good part is that in LA, the libraries are very radical. We're dealing with there's centers now for immigration rights. There's centers for training, jobs, getting your GED, getting jobs, and that is set down by the mayor. Our last mayor just started that, and so just trying to make it a really good center for learning. And I've come to people do need to use those computers because that's what it is today, and it's a safe place to learn all that. So I just stay supporting, and we are a little radical. I mean, I bring in politics to it, but pretty much everybody's, I live in a very, very democratic district. Our congressperson won by 80% of the vote.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. But you're also, since 2008, on the advisory board of the Los Angeles Department of Aging.
Yeah.
And how is that a or like committee that's
we meet once a month.
But have they been in place for a long time?
Yeah.
Or
It's a appointed position, and it's tried to be it's 25 members. It's a pretty good appointment. They try to get representatives from each of the council districts. The council districts are fairly powerful in Los Angeles. And we advise the Department of Aging on what we think the issues are. And there's a county commission that does the same thing, so they work together. But what we as a group have decided is that we feel hunger in America, in LA, is a big problem, and it is. So we've taken that on as a particular issue, and we are working on that and trying to address those issues and promote those issues where we can, and learn about. And I'm learning a lot about how you have to piece together stuff for grants, and because that's how the department gets most of their stuff, and the government, and the aging, the re-upping the aging bill, what's in it and everything like that. And of course that's under attack too. So Older Americans Act, I shouldn't say the aging. So I'm learning that. It's really a learning process, because you're sort of in on, and Laura Trujillo, who is our the director, and she's very good. She briefs us, and and we have senior centers and all what's going on. So and it's also partnering with learning how to partner with businesses and stuff like that. So it's just really a learning kind of situation. Yeah.
You seem to enjoy it.
I do.
So, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. Would you consider yourself an activist?
Yes.
Very much so, it seems. So, can I talk to you a little bit about maybe how that activism might have entered your personal life? Because clearly your professional life, you know, working to get the union, and then the way you choose to spend your free time, the Council on Aging, the ACLU committee, the Workers' Rights Committee. So certainly those are things you did outside of work. But your personal life, you mentioned that your second husband was African American. And did you meet him on the job, or did you meet him?
I met him. He was actually, his daughter worked for the airline, and his wife, or his ex-wife worked for the airline. So I met him basically through, you know, social events.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that, because even as liberal as Ellie probably was at that time compared to other parts of the United States, was that difficult for you?
No.
No?
Because, I mean...
Not for you personally, but the way people might have viewed it from the outside.
No.
Okay. Okay.
When we met, I mean, it was like love at first sight.
Really?
That was it. It was. It was just one of those things. And we both were in kind of bad marriages. And we didn't really get together for a long time, but we knew, somehow we just knew. And we knew that this is the one. So when we got, when we did get together, we were together, he passed away about a few years ago. When we together, we had one incident in all the years
Really?
that we were together. And that was when we were driving in a car, and it was the sheriff's department, which is notoriously, it was up in Hollywood, and they said that we looked like somebody they were looking for, so would we get out of the car? We got out of the car, and they started searching. Yeah, it's okay to search the car. And my husband had some apple juice that he had in a paper bag. It was a company, he worked for a bank. It was a company. He'd done a lot of different jobs, but anyway, he was a machinist once, actually. So this cop goes in there, and he picks up the bag with the bottle. You know, it's illegal to have an open bottle. You know, I don't know about the South, but in Ohio they had these drive-through liquor stores. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, he picks up the bottle, and he's like, oh wow, he's justified, and he takes it out of the thing and goes, oh, juice. Like, you could just see his whole face. So, you know, even that was, we sort of got our reward out of that. Immediately, exactly. But my husband had incidences.
Okay.
Yeah, previous to me meeting him, where he was...
And was his first wife African American also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then he had 3 kids. And that we were never a Brady bunch, but they've all lived with us, and we're all very good. They have bonded as, you know, they came as teenagers, basically, and they've all bonded. They consider themselves brothers and sisters. And there's just one that lives in Washington that has kind of been estranged from everybody. You know?
And because you had 2 from your first marriage,
yes,
Michael and
3.
Tisha.
Yeah.
And 3.
Yeah.
And did the kids ever encounter anything because of...
Only we went to the Olympics in Montreal. And we in Montreal, they just, you know, Vermont, my sister lives in Vermont, they just don't see blacks.
Right.
So that, you know, they got stared at a lot, and that they had never had that experience, even though they'd hang out in LA together. So it was not.
Okay. Well, that sounds very lucky then, that y'all didn't encounter...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Too many issues. And did your children end up being activists? Did you sort of instill some of your activist spirit into
Well, I
them?
don't know. My kids are... I will tell you a story about what happened to my kids, because it was interesting to them. at the time that my husband and I got married, well, we were living together before we got married, and we, the kids were going to this, at the time they had bus vouchers for everybody to go to different schools. Okay. So they were going to Culver City School because I had lived in Culver City. And then we moved into this house, and it's in Mid-City, and LA High School is the school. Well, the kids got kicked out of the Culver City School because somebody mentioned that where they lived. And so they had to go to their local school, which was LA High School. Well, LA High School had literally, my kids the first day got the question, like, why are you here? Because all the whites had all these transfers. To, my black kids went to Uni High and all the white schools, and now my kids are going to, all right? So my son, he's very quiet. He just took shop classes and basically got out of school, And he actually ended up marrying a black woman, but it didn't last. Now he's married to half Japanese, half German woman. And so then my daughter, who was a swimmer, she was really very good. She was a diver. And she went to that school and she was diving. They said, well, you can dive with the men's team because they didn't have a women's team. And she didn't want to do that. So she joined the swim team, and the coach was really happy to have her because, there weren't a lot of good swimmers. And so my daughter, from the 4th grade, she's very, very bright, and she's always been an organizer. So I would get calls when she was in the 4th grade from the school clerk. Well, is Tisha there because I need to know where this file is or whatever. Those kept her busy. So she got to swim with this swim team, but when they go on a meet, they would cornroll her hair, and she would pass. So the issue never came up that she was. So diversity in my family, when I go visit my daughter, she brings, even though she lives in Massachusetts where there aren't as many, diverse people, Barbie is black, they're adult, they just, it's just.
So it's been important for your kids to sort of give their kids that experience.
Yeah.
And that sort of level playing field.
Right. And to say the grandkids, I'm very close to the grandkids, all the white.
How many
and
grandkids
black.
do you have?
I have 11.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's easy. So yeah, I don't know that I think my daughter's becoming she works for government now. She's becoming a little more activist, and she does.
Is she a union? Is she organized with the government?
Huh?
Is she organized with the government? Is she a member of?
She did farm. No, she doesn't have a union.
Okay.
But she, the garden thing, somebody else was going to do it, and then, they sort of fell down on it. So the last two years, she organizes that, the garden, victory garden that they have for the government. They suggest that government workers do that. She manages to get everybody to build the things, and she's just she's very neither of my kids actually have a college education. I don't have a college education, but they're self-learners like myself, and so they do okay. Yeah. So.
It sounds like you're very proud of them.
I am.
As you should be.
Yeah.
All of them, as you should be.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to one of the most important things we've talked about at the conference this week, which is the trip to Ohio.
Okay.
You were in Ohio.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit for people reading this that might not understand the importance of you guys going in, why it was important to send people in to work for the Obama campaign?
Well, it was important because we made a difference. It's as simple as that. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to do it. It's like they say, it's the ground game. You just get out there people are friendly, if you're friendly, if you know not to argue with people, listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
They begin to think about who you are and why you took the time to come talk to them personally, and why you're willing to come back to drop a leaflet if they aren't home. Why you keep doing that? And it shows that even though we have a lot of new technology, it doesn't do the job. You need to combine it with the basics. You can't get away from the basic interaction of people to people.
The human touch.
Human, exactly. And it was a very good experience.
And how long were you there?
I was there about 3 weeks.
About 3
Yeah.
weeks. And it just involved you guys working with other local union organizations to know like who to reach out to.
Yeah, we ran. Well, some of them were there a month, but I had something that I couldn't get there earlier. We did work with the other organizations, but that it's hard to describe the dynamic. I mean, one of the things that really, really interests me is group dynamics. And when we would go to a union, we got split up, so people had different different people that they were working with. Well, we work with one. Andrea will probably tell you, but we worked with one that was happening before I got there. But this guy was just not good. But it helped us.
Was he trying to be good, or was he just?
No,
he wasn't engaged.
Why are you here? Basically. He came around at the end because we showed but we sort of bonded ourselves, and we just decided. I think whether we decided as unconscious group that we were just going to do our job. And again, it gets back to basics. When I first came on staff, there was somebody on my staff that said to me, I'd get all, dramatic about stuff, and they'd say, just do your job. There's a saying they have, just suit up and show up. That's, that it gets down to doing that. And if you do that, somehow, like my life has proven, that you just fall into good stuff. I don't know why, I can't say, it's up there, a higher power or whatever, but if you just suit up, show up, be who you are, good things happen. And you don't have to get into a confrontation with a bully. And this guy was a bully. So we just showed up every day. We did what, we did so much that they didn't have enough sheets ready for us to do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just were behind. And I think his people weren't showing up, and we were showing up, and that I think that bothered him too.
Well, also with that kind of leadership, it might not encourage you to show up. If his people.
His people. But he wasn't going to connect the dots. And there's no way you could point that out to him. So it was good because what happened is we set an example of hard work, and people kind of helped get into that. So when they went slowly, we finished this one place, so we moved to another, and then we did come back to that area, at what they call the Go TV, but it was really an excellent experience, and it did show how machinists, the education that we get, and the ability to bond with one another at Placid Harbor, because we had already worked together. Most of us had. And we knew each other. You know Sam. But that's okay. because you know who he is,
Yeah.
and you respect, and we do respect individuality.
Mhm.
And I think for me, coming from LA, that's what makes LA so great. There are so many individuals. The freedom there is just amazing because you know,
Okay, we were talking about LA.
yeah, and the freedom in LA, which like the example I wanted to give was like if you want to fly a kite in midnight in some city in the United States, the only place where you can do it and not be considered, weird or anything would be LA.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I like about it. I like the freedom to be who I am, and it's wonderful. It's a great place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's get back to Ohio for just a minute. I know that it was because it was a swing state
Yeah.
that there was worries that it would not, and it's an important state in order to win the election.
Right.
And that's why y'all were saying, how big was the group of people that went in? How big was your team?
Well, we were split up.
Okay.
So my team, I guess, was about 8, 9 people.
Mm-hmm. Total.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was just going out door to door, making.
We work with the
connecting.
international, the younger,
Mhm. And
well, they
with
were
the
Kenya.
AFL-CIO too, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where we had our issues. Some of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. I think what we did was apparently it turned out to be pretty unique in that working. We were a solid group that would come in every day. Every night we'd do the phone banking. I had a good experience of towards the end. Gwen and I, she was from the international. We were leafleting, and some one other person, and so we saw these women going to the same houses because you narrow down the houses, right? So we're going to the same houses, so we stopped them on the street and said, who are you working for? And they said Obama. Well, we couldn't combine our efforts because we were going to the exact same houses.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the law says you can't combine your campaign because we're going to union. We were only allowed to work for union.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we did agree to meet for drinks after work. So we did, and we started talking. And one was the librarian there of the Carnegie library that they have there in Sandusky.
Okay. And
the other one was a friend, and she was really good. And it turned out that their husbands are real conservative, and the two of them,
Interesting.
yeah, and they had worked for Obama the first time. So this time they had managed, it was great to keep their husbands and to promise that they wouldn't vote. They couldn't get them to change the vote, but they were able to get them not to vote. And it was really, you meet people that you do what you can.
Mm.
And they would tell us that their husband, when they told them they went out for drinks with us, they said, well, you and your communist friends.
That word gets thrown around
Yeah,
a lot.
a lot. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting to especially the women, because women sometimes are in that position where the man thinks he can, rule the roost with the vote even, and so that I think that was significant that there were women working door to door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Probably it wouldn't have been effective if it was just men.
Mm-hmm.
And also, one other thing I'd like to say about women is that I think they're better organizers because they're willing to talk about work in the workplace. And I think men are less willing. So I think they're really good implant type people, and I think they should have more women as organizers because I think they would, and they're more organized in many ways.
Just the skills that we are taught.
The type of skills that we are it's kind of like a multitasking, but it isn't. It's just kind of bred in us almost that we have to cook dinner, or we are cooking dinner at the same time we're trying to reschedule something so that we can do something else, and we figure out ways to do that and get it done.
I always know in the archives when we get a collection, or if there's a collection we've had for a while and we're just getting around to processing it, I can open a box and I always know if a woman ran that office or if a man ran that office. And I know that's sexist, but I know what you mean. Women are more organized. Folders have better descriptive labels on them. All the minutes are together and all the contracts are together. It's more organized.
Right.
Typically.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but typically.
Okay.
Well, do you want to, is there anything we haven't discussed in the interview today that you want to discuss? Maybe talk about mentors or the importance of, because you're active now with the young machinists as well, sort of guiding them. Would you mind saying a few words about that? Because I think that's a really important program, and that's a new program.
Yeah, I think it's a good program. Last year, Charlie put me with somebody at another conference, and in my town, and we worked together for a while, and then he kind of left or whatever, I don't know. But I think it is a good program. I think that it would be good to have a training program for people to mentor, how to mentor.
Mentoring is essential.
Because it is a learning process for me. And you just don't want to overload the person. And you want to just see what how people learn in different ways. And it would be good if they had a class in mentoring. I mean, it wouldn't even it could be like a day. But it should be, I think we should have something like that. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Well, if you don't have anything else to add, I would like to thank you so much for participating in this interview and for everything you've done for the machine.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Thank
officially
you.
a machinist, but I
great.
I know.
Well, I have a friend who's in, and I sort of mentor her. Yeah, she's in Atlanta, so she keeps asking me to come and visit. So I hope I will get there, and I would love to be. She works for CNN, so
that's just down the street for me.
Is it?
I can see where I park every day. I can see the CNN logo on the building.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this year or not next year.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
I would love
to try and get to Atlanta and actually, because I've never been. It's one of the cities I've never been to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I would hope to meet you there and see your cars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll show you around.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.